The narrator of this presentation is a stand-in because the budget didn't stretch to Morgan Freeman and the author is selectively mute. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Stupid girl. Transgressive literature, characterized as critiquing social norms and confronting taboo, is a genre dominated by male protagonists, perspectives, and authors. Within a genre that is controversial by its very nature, the treatment of a gender could easily be overlooked, though I feel that much of it possesses an objectifying male gaze towards female characters. Let's take a moment to define what we mean by gender. Sedgwick outlined that sex is merely the relatively raw material on which is then based the social construction of gender. Gender, then, is the far more elaborate, more fully and rigidly dichotomized social reproduction of male and female identities and behaviors. So gender refers to social and cultural constructions of masculinities and femininities, and alludes to the threat of consequences for breaking gender norms. In this light, what it means to be a woman has nothing to do with biological differences from men. It is performance. Taking women as a construction in this way, I believe that women are further categorized within transgressive literature to serve very definite roles for the primarily damaged men. At a glance, authors within transgressive literature do not appear to know how to handle female characters, aside from destructively. It makes them masculine, insane, ridiculous, sex-crazed, and, at best, merely pathetic. They have been approached with the same trepidation as Darwinists when they first discovered the platypus. It would be easy to condemn this genre for trying to set feminism back a few decades, with challenged males using women to reassert their masculinity, either through demonizing them or highlighting them as the weaker and more vulnerable sex. An entirely absent mother figure across the spectrum only enhances the sense of demonization of the breasted breed. However, as this genre is controversial by nature, the tone of each book must be taken into account. In The Dice Man, Luke Reinhardt mistreats women but is ultimately ridiculous himself, so we are invited to scorn his actions. Patrick Bateman is insane, and American Psycho is written well within his furiously detailed slant, so we should take the book's portrayal of women with a pinch of salt. Fight Club brutalizes femininity in men through an aggressively defensive and enhanced sense of machismo, but then works to defeminize and empower the only significant female character, Marla Singer. This mishandling can be divvied up into three categories of how women have been utilized across the genre: women as men, women as submissive, and women as other. Some transgressive texts have chosen to depict women outside of the cultural stereotypes, treating them as morally questionable and socially lost as the men. In Soto's Index, men and women are empoweringly equal in a depraved world of pornography, anonymous and unprotected sex, drug abuse, prostitution, and murder. It's not just equal treatment, though. In Fight Club, Marla Singer rejects the female expectation by going to the support group for testicular cancer, and is arguably tougher than the schizophrenic insomniac narrator. The book also makes her masculine. My tit's gonna rot off implies that her female parts are diseased. I want to have your abortion is her rejecting the procreating role of women. J.T. Leroy takes this a step further in Sarah. Subverting gender entirely as the protagonist, Cherry Vanilla, passes himself off as a virgin girl, whilst working in a truck stop brothel alongside his mother. In fact, there are multiple young boys dressed as women, unified by complete rejection of masculinity, to excel in excessively slutty feminine traits, in order to become the best prostitute on the lot. I'd have contests with Sarah. We'd lie on our backs side by side on some motel bed with our heads hanging tilted back over the edge of the bed, till our mouths, esophagus, and throats would all line up. Then we'd put in a carrot as deep as we could without gagging. We'd mark the carrot with our top teeth, and after we'd see who was the better head giver. Sarah always won. With dedication like that, only a nymphomaniac triple-cunted hooker could top them on the lot, and it's worth pointing out that J.T. Leroy is a woman. What makes a woman is a specific social relation to a man, a relation that we have previously called servitude, a relation which implies personal and physical obligation as well as economic obligation. This boils down to submission and passivity, but without the fun of BDSM. You are nothing but a woman implies you are defective. Before you start looking for the cloven hooves, let me reiterate that here women, as well as the category men, are political and economic categories, not eternal ones. In Crash, this submissiveness is not enforced as a negative. Women are merely another element of sexual gratification, like the mangled cars. Indeed, the most titillating sex for the men involves juxtaposing the female body against dented chrome and exploded gearboxes. In Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, there is barely a female presence in the book, so when one appears it seems that Thompson is doing something significant. However, Lucy is a young woman who paints portraits of Barbra Streisand. comes to Las Vegas to give them to her idol as gifts, and then suitably mocked and exploited by our two drugged rogues, Dr. Gonzo has her pawned off as an article, rather like that quaint sense of sanity that gets waved at as it passes them by. Turning to American Psycho, the submissiveness of women can be construed from their frequent victimization by the principal nutball of the book, Patrick Bateman. The violence towards women is primarily within a sexual context, whereas the male violence is not. The women spared Bateman's implements don't get off lightly, however, written as even shallower than the man and emotionally twisted to boot. Let's take a brief look at the lineup. Evelyn Williams is Bateman's girlfriend. They openly loathe each other, but stay together for the sake of their social lives. Lewis Carruthers is Bateman's co-worker, whom is in love with him, something which disgusts the homophobic Bateman. Finally, Courtney Lawrence is Lewis's girlfriend, who is having an affair with Bateman. This is turning into a soap, isn't it? She struggles with depression and drug addiction, but that doesn't matter to Bateman, as he's only interested in the sex. Feminization, particularly Bateman's with his obsessive personal grooming, is given a negative slant. But as the book is geared to criticize the preening yuppie culture and consumerism, we can't condemn it for indirectly mocking $200 pedicures. The women in The Dice Man are caricatures, in much the same way as the high-powered yuppies are in American Psycho, here presented as weak and utterly ridiculous. For example, "What do you want?" The door stayed open only a crack. "I've come downstairs to rape you," I said. "Oh," she said. "Just a minute." Women are only later equalized in the Dice House because everything is so random that identity itself, let alone gender, means nothing. We have been compelled in our bodies and in our minds to correspond feature by feature with the idea of nature that has been established for us, distorted to such an extent that in the end oppression seems to be a consequence of this nature within ourselves, a nature which is only an idea. Women are, in purpose and spirit, something other than man. As it's mankind and human, it's not a stretch to perceive women as other where texts are all about the man. In this twisted genre, the sense of otherness has been taken to the extremes of the literal. In the infamous Lolita, Humbert, becoming obsessed with a 12-year-old girl named Dolores Hayes, whom he lovingly nicknames Lolita, she is made very much other, in a near-mystical sense, elevated above the other girls as a nymphette, a creature that damns any man who can see one to madness. A normal man, given a group photograph of schoolgirls or Girl Scouts, and asked to point out the comeliest one, will not necessarily choose the nymphette among them. You have to be an artist and a madman, a creature of infinite melancholy, with a hot bubble of hot poison in your loins, and a super-voluptuous flame permanently aglow in your subtle spine. Oh, how you have to cringe and hide, in order to discern, at once, by ineffable signs, the slightly feline outline of a cheekbone, the slenderness of a downy limb, and other indices, which despair and shame and tears of tenderness forbid me to tabulate, the deadly demon among the wholesome children. She stands unrecognized by them, and unconscious herself of her fantastic power. Humbert becomes blind to her personality because she has captivated him as a nymphette. The sense of women as other penetrates the physical form in some texts, making them monstrous. In Copping Free, the primary female character, Ely the Serpent Girl, is heavily disfigured and literally defined as a freak in a freak show. Indeed, a significant part of her allure for the narrator lies in her sense of strange otherness. Invisible Monsters is one of the few books in this lineup told from a female perspective, that of supermodel-turned-monster Shannon, whom has lost the bottom half of her face in a mysterious shooting. The only person she is close to in the book is Brandy Alexander, a flamboyant transsexual one operation away from being a woman. Here are two instances of otherness: the deformed woman and the drag queen whom plays up the stereotypes of the gender. So what of myself as a transgressive writer? Will my female characters inevitably fall into one of these categories in the same way? The male gaze umbrella under which these trends huddle can be escaped. Just look at Annie Proulx. Certainly something to consider. Thus far it seems that my female characters are empowered, either through being masculine or other. It's the men who are corralled into submission by dominatrices, stone dykes, and crooked cops. The only female character that I haven't gender meddled with at all struggled for over a year to come off the page. In a genre that gears itself up to controversy and taboo, the negative representation of women is an easy mark to attack. However, like with all characters, female characters are used by the author to further the plot and enhance the atmosphere and tone of the story. If that atmosphere is slanted and the plot is twisted, then the women are doomed to have an unsavory representation. The genre is not misogynistic in itself, but taboo lends itself to the tormenting of the weak and misguided. Society itself has spent centuries varnishing this notion into its representation of women. Derogatory representation in literature isn't going to undo the efforts towards cultural equality between genders. Transgression never set out to change the world, merely to shamelessly dance around on everything that's wrong with it.